anyways, so you come up on Pointed Rocks, and we have this great video of my pacer, Matt. He has this, I'm like, oh, what's that cute little animal? And I was like, oh, he's a little sweetie. And then Matt goes, Leah, that's a skunk. And I was like,
it was cute.
He whips out his phone and starts recording it. And he's like, I'll get in front. I'm like, okay, cool. So he like takes one for the team, gets in front of me, and he's like, oh Jesus. And you see the skunk like lift his little tail up, and I'm like, what? And he's like, go. F9. There's a skunk on the trail.
Oh my gosh. We love it.
He's telling the aid station like announcer people that. So as I'm getting close to the aid station, they announce my name loud on like the loudspeaker there, which I was expecting them to announce yours, but maybe they did, and I just like didn't hear it. But I hear them say, and here we've got F9 Leah Yingling with a skunk.
Oh, that is so funny. I hope that got on the live stream. That is amazing.
No, I talked to Brett Hornig about it because he was at Pointed Rocks on live stream, and he was getting all this intel and was so excited to share it. But they were doing the finish line interviews of 1, 2, and 3 at that point.
Fair enough. We got to run faster to get that. Oh my goodness.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Trail Network podcast. I'm Leah Yingling. On this episode, Rachel and I dive into our top 10 performances at Western States. We talk about how our days played out, lessons learned, special moments, and how we ran within 1 minute of each other for the last 20 miles. What a special day we both had out there. We hope you enjoy. Let's dive in.
Hello, Trail Network Nation. Today you have me, Rachel.
And Leah.
And we are going to recap our Western States 100-mile races from about 3 days ago. So we're recording now on Wednesday, and the race went down on Saturday. And yeah, so Leah, what were your goals going into this race?
Oh, so I'll take a step back and congratulate you for a second, Rachel. This was your first 100-miler, 8th place finish at Western States. I followed in your footsteps, two places behind you in 10th place, which I'm really thrilled about. So yeah, it was a pleasure sharing the day with you. And I think we'll dig into a lot of the elements of working together and chasing each other down throughout the day and talk about how that played out. But for me, this was my third Western States. I ran in 2022, 2023, and I had outwardly proclaimed on social media that this will be my last Western States for some time. I think as a woman in the sport, we've got lots of competing goals often. And some of those competing goals for me are starting a family, investing my time and energy into my career, into other avenues of the sport, like some more mountain running and other races that haven't been on my radar in recent years. So I think Western States, while extremely special, and I'm so privileged to have had the last 3 years there, it takes a lot out of you, and it kind of focuses much of your season on that race specifically. So I knew that this was going to be my last Western States for some time, and I wanted to get a lot out of myself. I wanted to run it a little bit differently than I typically do, which tends to be this more conservative style race. And ultimately, I wanted to have my best performance yet. And I think if anybody was following along with Western States this past weekend, it was a historic race across the board for the women, for the men, for the entire field. And it is getting harder and harder and harder to have like time goals in a race like Western States. It's getting faster and faster and faster. We saw the fastest top 10 ever on the women's side. Some of like the most historic fastest times period on the women's podium. So for me coming into the race, something I really wanted was to be able to say that I'm a 3-time top 10 Western States finisher. That was one of my goals. And I would say like my A goal was a podium position. I think it's hard to run Western States without the dream of chasing a podium. And I knew for me that like on my best day, that is definitely possible. And I wanted to run a little bit different this year to see if it could play out that way. Because in past years, I had a 6th place finish, 9th place finish, and was hoping to improve on that this year. But really pleased with the 10th place finish. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't part of me that wanted to be a little bit higher up in the field. But I think from a time perspective, I ran just over 17 and a half hours, which if you would have told me that 2 years ago when I ran my first Western States, that I would eventually run 17 and a half hours there, I would have never believed you. So I think just the progression I've made in over the 3 years at Western States was just exceptional for me. And I'm so pleased.
That's awesome. Yeah, huge congrats to you, Leah. I mean, your consistency here is incredible and such an inspiration. It was so fun getting to share a lot of miles with you and kind of queuing off of you. I'm curious, like, as you were kind of planning your race, were you looking at splits and kind of thinking as we were going, like, okay, we're running pretty fast? And we were talking about this while we were running together in the race.
Mm-hmm.
But were you thinking like, okay, this should put us pretty high up if we're running this fast? Historically, looking at times.
Totally. Like, I think during the race, you and I had chatted about, a time into Robinson Flat. And that's something I like to advocate for in my races, period, is like not having these strict time splits, aid station to aid station to aid station, but having this like ballpark number for these larger splits. So for Robinson Flat, for example, in the past, I had run just over 5:45 into that aid station. And my goal this year was to come in there under or around 5.5 hours, which would be 17 minutes faster than I had in the past. And it was funny how much I have learned about myself and like my pacing and how I'm feeling in that moment, that I think early on we went out at a faster pace than I normally do in that first 10 miles. And I remember saying to, I think you and Anna Cassius and a few of the other women that we were running with, that it felt like we were on 5:15 to 5:20 pace at that point into Robinson Flat. And I was like, that feels a little fast. Like, that's usually what that like front pack is doing. And sometimes that front pack doesn't exactly hang on. So I knew that like 5:30 was this like safe place. And I was like, I think bringing it back isn't a bad idea now, because I think people will come back and we'll probably be a little bit more comfortable at this pace too. So that was like one of the big times that I was thinking of in my head. And then later in the race, I know how long it takes me to run from river to the finish. So just like using that as a guide in those last like 20 miles to look at my watch and be like, okay, if you can do this, what you've historically done it in, you should be able to run like 17 and a half hours, which was really cool. So I think being mindful of splits, but not holding myself directly to them and judging myself based on them, it's really important, because I think that also allows for you to run how you're feeling in that moment and make those calls based off of the cues that your body's giving you, that you're kind of playing off of your competitors, and a variety of things like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like this was the first race where I hadn't written any splits down on my hand. Like for Black Canyon, I had all the main aid station splits on my hand. And I was like, well, first of all, my arm is just going to be written on because it's a 100-mile race. But second of all, like you said, I just wanted to give myself the opportunity to run how I was feeling. And if I was feeling really good, to not push it, but allow myself to run a little faster, and also not stress if I was slower than anticipated.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's a great conversation too, because this being your first 100, talk a little bit about, your goals going into it, but also how you then felt and framed your first, let's say, like third to half of the race.
Yeah. So going into it, I mean, it's so hard to set goals in terms of like this place, that place. I set my splits for 18-hour pace because historically, even on a really cool year, that should put you in the top 10, which was not the case this year. But I came into Robinson Flat, I think around 5:20, just like you predicted. So going back to my goals, my A goal, like knock it out of the park, was to win. I knew that would be really hard. I knew Katie was just in amazing shape and that she would really be difficult to beat. But I wanted to be like the person that was nipping at her heels, potentially stressing her out. But then my B goal was, I think, top 5. I felt like that was reasonable, but I mean, again, who knows? Anything could happen. And then, my C goal was top 10. And kind of after I set all those goals, I was like, you know what? My North Star really has to be to finish this race and to feel satisfied with the effort, knowing that I ran as fast as I could. And I really, like you said, while I'm a little bit disappointed in my actual place that I got, I am so thrilled with how hard I tried. That was really satisfying. Like, we'll get through this kind of as we go, but like, I had some challenges throughout the day, and I'm just really kind of surprised at how calm I stayed and how composed and positive. Like, I didn't panic, I didn't freak out. Bad things did happen, and I feel like I really just was like, it's fine, everything's fine. So I'm super happy with that.
Rachel, I'm so glad you say that, because like, looking from an outsider's perspective at your race, I think I was talking to Mike this week, and I was like, just from like what I know about your race, and I'm sure I'm about to learn a lot about your race in our conversation, but I think I told him, I was like, Rachel has to be so pleased with her race, because like, from what I saw, like, you went out pretty conservative, and then around, let's say, like the 50K mark, what I think happened, and we'll dig into this, but I'm like, it's like you turned a switch and you're like, okay, let's get to work. And then you started to like work a little harder. And then eventually, like, you had challenges along the way, and challenges that then probably got in your way a little bit and forced you to be like, okay, we need to recalibrate. Like, I might need a pep talk. Like, let's get into this. And you stayed solid. You had those lows. Like, you started getting caught, and then you got super competitive again and brought it all back together and slammed the last 20 miles. So it was like, you had these highs, you had these lows, you went out conservative, you surged a little bit, you showed yourself that like, these lows aren't permanent and they don't need to be, and you could turn it around and still run as hard as you possibly can. And yeah, maybe the finish place isn't exactly what you want, but you got a lot out of yourself on that day, and like, proved to yourself that like, hey, you're a good 100-mile runner, which I think is awesome.
I don't know if we can say that with a sample size of 1. I think we were running, Leah and Anna Cassius and I, and so kind of backing up a little bit, we did the first climb together, and really the first around 50K together. We were in a group with Anna Cassius, Lottie Brinks, Esther, Ingveld, Emily Schmitz, Priscilla, just kind of like bopping around in that group. And I was feeling okay, but I was kind of feeling like it was more 100K pace for me than 100-mile pace. Not that I know what that is. And so I think when we went through Lion Ridge, I took a little bit longer at the 8 and ended up more at the back of that train. And I was with you and Emily and I think Anna. And I was like, okay, this feels a lot better. Like, just a little less frantic, a little less on the gas. Yes. And you said, yeah, guys, we know how to run 100-milers. And I go, speak for yourself.
But we do. Like, I thought that was such a mature move of you in that moment, because like, I was thinking this, like, I wanted to do the same thing, and I was kind of waiting for somebody to do it. And if somebody didn't do it, I was going to do it. So I was really happy that you did that in that moment, because like, I've never felt extremely great on that section each year. And this year I was like, okay, I'm going to go out more aggressive. I'm going to like push myself. I'm going to try to stay with that like chase pack. And I mean, we went out with a group who included like Ingvild and Esther, who ended up being in the top 5. And like, on a great day, yeah, like, I would have loved to be able to run the race with them moving forward, like after that point. But at the same time, like, in that moment, like, I pushed myself. Like, I was a little risky early on, and then I realized like, oh, this just isn't comfortable, and I don't know if I'm going to have my best day if I keep holding this. So like, you taking that making that decision to kind of like step it back a little bit, I thought was a great move in that moment. And I like was so happy that you did that, because I do think that enabled us, and like probably you as well, to just like continue strong later on in that race,
Yeah.
like those last 20 miles, for example.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think part of that too was having each other to do it with, because I think if it was the entire group running away and you're alone making that decision, it feels a lot more scary. But I felt much more confident doing it in a group with
Totally.
several other women. What were your thoughts when you saw your crew at Dusty Corners? Yeah, the first crew spot.
Yeah, so this was a pretty, like, I didn't have too many low moments on the day, but I do feel like that first aid station where we saw our crew was one of my like lower moments just coming out of there. So I think at this point, you had went ahead of me on the descent. I think you and maybe a few others, and then I was probably a minute or so back from you rolling into that first aid station with Emily. And if anybody's been at Western States, what is that first one? Duncan Canyon. It is hectic. It's hectic. You come
It's
down.
Duncan Canyon first. Okay, I was getting those two mixed.
I think it is, yeah.
Okay,
And then
we're talking about the first one at like mile 24.
yes. And it's the first time you get to see your crew. Your crew has gone through hell and back to get out to this aid station. Like, these aid stations are not easy to get to. It's probably almost a 3-hour drive from the start of the race. And like,
My
you
crew
wouldn't really want to
slept
see your
out there the
crew.
night before.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Thanks, Abby and Mark.
Oh my God, that's a good crew. But yeah, you come out off of this long descent into the aid station, you bop right down, and there's a line, a wall of people. And I was coming in with Emily Schmitz, and it's hard to spot your crew there. And I think mine and Emily's crews were next to each other, like both waving at us. And I'm like, honestly, I don't even know who my crew is anymore. Like, who am I looking for here?
Oh my
And
God.
it just felt like straight up chaos.
Chaos.
And I got iced down at that one, because at this point, it was probably a few hours into the race, starting to feel a little bit warm, because it just gets pretty exposed and hot out there. So I iced down, got all these things. We put ice in my arm sleeves, and like, I had never worn these arm sleeves before. They were like ones I got off of Amazon the night, like the week of, and these weren't compression arm sleeves. They were just like nice, like soft, stretchy ones. And
Okay.
I didn't even think about the benefit of compression in your arm sleeves for actually holding ice in place. So I got these arm sleeves filled with ice, and there's this video of me coming out of this aid station running away with these like big floppy
Swinging.
sacks of ice just like swinging off the bottom of my arms. And like, I can't tell you how much those were stressing me out. I had these like big like extra phalanges just like off my elbows.
That's hilarious.
And I was using a water bottle. They tell you not to do new things on race day, and I should really take this to heart. So I was like using a water bottle I had never really used before, too, like a handheld to douse myself, and these balls of ice just wiggling off my elbows. And I'm leaving this aid station in this like fury, and then I wipe out completely.
Okay, that
faceplant.
little descent, like back onto the trail, is super dusty and
Yes. So
steep.
I'm head to toe covered in dust with all this like ice in my elbows. So then I empty my elbows of this ice, and then my water bottle kind of gets like all dusty. I'm just filthy. And I'm like, oh, I'm so frustrated. This was so like flustering. And then I'm like, okay, let's just get back to it. So I start running again, and then I wipe out again, like 30 seconds later. And I think I just like grunted on the trail. And then Emily Schmitz comes up behind me, and she's like, you good? And I was like, I don't know. I'm stressed out right now. I was like, I need to just chill for a minute. So I think I took that next section just to like recalibrate, remind myself like the race is not won here. It's not like I don't need to be doing anything stupid here, stressing myself out. And like the goal is to come into Robinson Flat, like feeling good and feeling calm, because you still got 70 miles to go. So I think for me, like that aid station, like set this tone of chaos, and then it continued on, and I almost had to like reframe in my mind, like, hey, calm down. This doesn't matter. Get to Robinson Flat feeling good. So then by the time I rolled into Robinson Flat, I came in and I told my crew, I was like, hey guys, we just need to be calm here. Like take our time. I was like, let's take a minute. Let's be calm. Let's have low energy, because that's what I need right now. And that actually like completely reset me, which was very nice.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. What was the section like from Dusty, or no, it's Duncan Canyon, from Duncan Canyon to Robinson Flat? Because it's a little descent and climb. Who were you with, and did you?
Yeah, so I was mostly with Emily on this section, Emily and then Kareth Arnold. So
Okay.
we were pretty much just like chilling down. You go down to a creek, and like that's like kind of like a nice one to douse yourself in. And I felt fine on like the flats and downhills and was just chilling. I know each year I kind of just like relax on this, but I do know that my climbs were feeling really strong on race day.
Right.
So I know that there's this like pretty like this little climb that goes up into Robinson Flat. And I know that in past years, I've swooped up a few people right as we roll into Robinson Flat. And what I wanted to do this year, I was like, I want to run into Robinson Flat in a pack, because that's what I've done the last couple of years. And it kind of propels me forward and gives me people to then like leave the aid station with. So at that time, me and Emily had kind of been like solo for a while. And as I saw that climb to start to climb, I was like, okay, I'm going to like maybe push a little bit, try to catch up to the pack in front of me that was like Priscilla and Ragna and Anna, and kind of got back on that group, and we all rolled into Robinson Flat together, which was really nice and gave me some energy to get into that aid station and then have some folks to leave the aid station with as well.
That's great.
How was that section for you? Because I think that's when I lost you, and looking at splits, then it looks like you probably rolled into Robinson Flat probably about 3 to 4 minutes ahead of me.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was feeling really good. I had a similar kind of crazy Duncan Canyon aid station. I was able to see my crew right away because they were like directly ahead as you came down the trail, but it just felt kind of chaotic. And then as I was running down the spot where you probably fell, like my watch came undone and it was kind of flopping. And our friend Yassine was there, and he's like, you're good. I think Drew Holman was there as well. Just like, stay calm, be patient. So I was like, okay. And then as I was running down the trail, I saw this ice cube that like in my heart, I knew it was like one of Tyler's ice cubes. And that just like warmed my heart. I haven't actually told him that yet, but I was like, it just reminded me that like he had run there not too long before. So that was cool. And then shortly after that, I saw Ragna up ahead, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm like, I'm starting to swim upstream a little bit. Yeah, that section felt pretty smooth. And then on the climb up into Robinson Flat, I caught up with Lauren Puretz, and I was like, looking good, Dr. Puretz. So that was cool. The crew station in Robinson Flat was really good. Mike, your husband, like ran in with me, and he wiped out hard. He tripped on a really like a log, and there are all these sticks. Like I imagine he's got some wounds from that. But
he definitely does.
He didn't make a sound. Is he okay?
He's fine. There was a point during the day when I saw him and I saw all these scrapes like on his fists, and I was like, you good? What happened? I was like, have you had a good day? And he's like, I had one big fall earlier, but we're good now. And so what I learned is like crewing at Robinson, from everybody I've talked to on my crew so far, they are like stressed out by crewing there because there's a lot of space for runners, but the crew is completely like pushed to the outside. And then so if you're somebody that's crewed race a lot, it's really nice to like see your runner come into the aid station and then like run them to wherever your crew spot is so they can see that.
Yes.
But with the way Robinson Flat is set up, it makes it really difficult because they're not allowed to run on the same path that the runners are running. So what they have to do is they have to run behind all the crew people, and all the crew people are on these like logs and brush and knock down trees and all these. So it's not, you cannot run smoothly on that. So I'm assuming that's probably what
I think that's what happened in that moment. Yeah. Poor guy. I had one of my crew members kind of like standing on a log pointing like, we're over here. So that was helpful. It felt a lot less busy than years past when I had crewed there. And I think it's because they moved the aid station into the campground. So there's a little more
that makes sense
maybe. But yeah, not much to write home about there. But then
I saw a video of your crew exchange there on Instagram, and you guys looked awesome. Like just the pit crew there, you looked happy. You're getting iced down, and it was really cool because I think they did this compilation of Tyler's crew exchange there and your crew exchange. So it was really neat to see like what you guys do similarly, what you guys do differently, and
Yeah.
just like how you both approach those stations.
Yeah. The woman I asked to be my crew chief, Emily Favre, she was seriously like amazing. I feel like she was like the wedding planner from heaven. Like she had thought of everything, and like I didn't have a single worry or like, oh crap, I have to tell her this, because I feel like she had already thought of everything. And she was also very calm and fun, and it was just like, I don't know, I feel super super grateful to her.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So then leaving Robinson, I feel like that next section is made for you. It's this long 13-mile downhill, really cruisy.
Super runnable.
And I was
Yeah.
in my head, like, I mean, I would have loved to be up running that section with you. But I know for me, that's been not a weakness in past years, but like something I've just gotten a little bit complacent on, because it's really easy just to let like gravity do the work there. And yeah, that's important to not work too hard. But I also think it's an opportunity to be a little bit more focused and use that as your first chance to like turn it up a notch. How were you approaching that long section? Because I do think if I'm looking at the splits of the day, if there was any section where I feel like you got away from me, it was definitely like on that section. And I know one of the races that I was looking at a bit when I was formulating like a plan for this year was Esther Chilog's race from last year, where she ran super, super conservative into the first 50K and blasted from Robinson Flat to the finish. So when I see a race like that, I tell myself like, hey, that's possible. And you can do that too. So when I built my splits out for this year, I kind of built them out with like getting into Robinson Flat around 5:30 and then running ideally the way that Esther ran from there to the finish, because I knew it was possible. But I knew what it would take was using Robinson Flat as that like switch, turning it up a gear and really being focused on that long descent. So how did that section seem to play out for you?
Yeah, I kind of had that. Well, I hadn't thought about Esther's thing until you mentioned it when we were running together early in the race. Like, yeah, I was running with Esther all the way up until here, up until Robinson Flat. So like we're in a great spot. I think before the race, I was talking to Tyler and he's like, hey, that, like you said, this downhill half marathon is really a place that kind of suits you. And so don't hold back, like feeling like you need to run with someone, like just let it flow there. Don't necessarily hammer it. But I feel like I was just like running how I felt like I needed to run. At that point, my anterior tibial tendon, so like the tendon on top of your foot, I think I had tied my shoes a little too tight, or it was already a lot of downhill and it was just killing me. So I stopped and tried to retie my shoe, and it didn't really do anything, but I just kind of like had to ignore it. But through that section, so yeah, you climb up out of Robinson Flat and then you're going downhill. I could see someone running up ahead and I couldn't quite tell who it was, but ended up being Lottie Brinks. So I passed her a couple miles out of Robinson. And then I think I just, I didn't catch up with Ingveld until, Dusty Corners. So that whole section, it was pretty unremarkable just because you're running kind of on a road for a while and then you get on a trail and then it gets wide again. But yeah, I grouped up with Ingveld and we stayed together for quite a while. But how was that section for you?
I actually, it was cool to see because I went back through some of the splits from the race to see how your race played out in that middle section when like I stopped seeing you. And I didn't know that you caught up to Ingveld. And I bet you that was probably nice for you for that to happen, because like, you know, Ingveld's a really strong runner. Like if like, yeah, I think a head-to-head between you and Ingveld in any race, I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to see. So I feel like you guys both have really similar strengths. So that was probably a really nice person to then be like, okay, cool. Like I'm right where I want to be. And it almost like validated that conservative start. You worked your way up. Now you're with Ingveld and like, there's not much of a field in front of you. So now it's just about like working together with her and seeing what happens next.
Yeah. And our podcast co-host, Katie Asmith, was at Dusty Corners and she's like, what do you want to know? And I was like, what place am I in? I was just kind of curious. Like, I didn't really want to know too early because it didn't really matter what place I was in, but she was like, you're in 10th. And I was like, oh, cool. Okay. Like, We haven't
Nice.
even gone through the canyons. I feel calm and we're already in 10. So
Perfect.
yeah. Yeah. What was going through your mind through that section and into Dusty?
Yeah, that was so gosh, I'm just talking about all the new things I did on race day. But
Yeah.
I know. So
Come
I did
on,
try
this
this.
is not your first rodeo.
I know. I tried this out at Quad Rock this year, so it was kind of like my second time doing this, but I used a lot of my goo flasks this time around to fill with
Okay.
a bunch of my gels. And
Are you mixing and matching or are you
I
like
was using, I would have like all mostly like one flavor in one, but they would have different varieties of like carbs in them. So maybe one would have like 75 grams, one would have 90. I was trying to do like a mix of gels and the goo Roctane that they had on course because I know that combo works really well for me. So I had been felt pretty great up until Robinson, but I will say on that section into Dusty Corners, I started to have like some GI distress, which I then like had to pull over one time to go to the bathroom, and then I had like three people pass me, and I like it was like Elsie Davis, Emily Schmitz, and then I think it was Kareth Arnold. So then I'm like, all right, that's fine. Like you're fine. You can just like kind of work with that group, work behind them on this next section. So that was like a little disheartening in that moment because I felt like I had been pretty like purposeful on that section after Robinson. But then I'm like, okay, let's try to troubleshoot your stomach a little bit. And I think I kind of did all the things I know how to do to bring that back together. And I felt fine, but definitely did not feel like that section into Dusty was as strong as I would have wanted it to be. But I will say I kind of like leaving Dusty then because you don't see your crew then from Dusty Corners to Michigan Bluff. And I find that a strength of mine is like really taking care of myself when I'm not with my crew. And I think it's more of a strength of mine compared to perhaps like some of my other competitors. So I kept telling myself that like, this is your opportunity to take care of yourself and like do all the things that you need to do because
you're an independent woman.
You can have faith that like there's probably people out there that aren't doing that. And I rolled into Last Chance with Emily and I told her exactly that. I was like, Emily, you're doing all the right things. Like keep taking care of yourself. There's a lot of people that aren't and like they'll come back. And turns out nobody really does come back.
Well, at least this year. At least this year.
I know.
And I feel like the women tend to come back less than the men.
Totally.
Okay.
Yes. So then I will say, like, what was nice to feel was like last year at Western States and UTMB, like I had dead quads early on, and I don't know what I really attribute that to. But this year I got to the same point during Western States and like my quads felt so resilient, which I thought was amazing. And something that Mike had told me going into the race was like, trust your quads. And he's like, tell yourself that too. So like every downhill, I started to like kind of like turn it on a little bit, just be more focused and would just be like, trust your quads, trust your quads, trust your quads, which meant like me probably like letting go a little bit more than I normally would and like sending it a bit more, trusting then that like that wouldn't impact me on the climbs that were then to follow. And that worked. I actually loved that section from Last Chance then up to Michigan Bluff because it's a combo of those like steep descents with then like kind of long climbs that I feel like ended up being my strength this year specifically.
Nice. In quads we trust.
In quads we trust.
Okay, 2 follow-up questions from going back to your fueling. And if it's proprietary, you don't need to share. But I'm curious what your grams of carbs per hour goal was going in.
Good question. I didn't really have much of a goal. I would say, I mean, I guess I had a range. So I wanted to be somewhere between 70, this is so wide, 70 to 100 grams of carbs, depending on how my body was handling them in that moment and depending on the heat and what I needed. Because I know for me, in 100 milers, there comes a point where doing gels with Roctane eventually gets to be too much for me. And I think I actually can get probably 100 grams of carb in when I have one bottle of water.
Easily with the Roctane.
Easily, because a bottle of goo Roctane, when I have my crew do it, it's about 60 grams of carbs. And then when the aid stations do it, I think you were telling me it's like 45
47,
to 50. Yeah. So I know if I'm taking 2 gels an hour with a full bottle of Roctane, I'm getting about 90 grams of carbs. So that was
Mhm.
my like baseline standard was take 2 gels, drink a bottle of Roctane every hour with my
Okay.
bottle of water as well. And that was working pretty well, but I do get kind of like sick of having electrolyte drink at some point. So I
Mhm.
realized that and like my GI distress in the canyons, I was like, now I'm going strictly to water. So when I did that, then I had to be really cognizant of upping my gel intake.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
like I mentioned, I was doing the goo flasks, and
Mhm.
I realized there's something, I know this isn't environmentally friendly, but like there's something about the act of opening up a gel packet during the race that's like satisfying and like a check in the
Huh.
box for me, that I can
Interesting.
keep a lot more like tabs on what I'm consuming. And I
Yeah.
definitely missed that piece this year because I was then just taking like a third of the bottle swig every 20 minutes or so. And I
Mhm.
think I would have actually liked to be like taking a gel, putting it back, putting it in my pocket and being like, done.
Yeah, the wrapper's like a little trophy of like, hey guys, I ate this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Um, so that's like, I would say at the end of the day, then I had to like really modulate what I did throughout the day, but I probably ended up averaging somewhere around like 80
Okay.
to 90 grams of carbs an hour.
Nice.
How
And when
about
you
you?
were so when I ran Black Canyon, I was going for 90 and I hit that for quite a while. I think the first few hours I was around 100, but
Nice.
I had some GI distress at Black Canyon, and in my post-race debrief and troubleshooting, I think I was just overdoing it. I think I was
Hmm.
eating more than I actually needed. And so for this race, I just shot for 70,
Yeah.
and I actually, like, in terms of feeling like GI problems, I didn't really have any. I had some other GI related problems that I don't think were related to fueling. I think
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll get into it when we get to that section. But um my other question for you was, you said you did all the things you needed to do to troubleshoot your GI problems, and you talked about doing more water and increasing your gel intake. Was there anything else that you do when you
That's
start feeling
most
bad?
like there's a couple things. So when my stomach, especially when it's like I'm having to go to the bathroom, um, that usually in my mind is like likely an electrolyte problem. Like
Okay.
I'm over consuming sodium or maybe over consuming carbs.
There's
So
a
like in my mind, the way I trend then is like, okay, I probably need to cut down on carbs or I need to cut back on my electrolytes a little bit. So for me, I have like different options of gels. So I always have some gels with me that are like really like lower on the electrolytes and just kind of like straight sugar. There's
Yeah.
a really like nice raspberry lemonade goo flavor that I like that isn't
Room.
one of the Roctane gels.
Okay.
So I'll usually then just like go to those for an hour or so with just water and see if
Okay.
that resets me. And
Like,
more often than not, it does, which was nice. I don't tend to do much solid food in like I actually didn't do any solid food except for like 2 pickles. Um, but then I did feel like I was not getting my electrolytes from my gels, not getting as much electrolyte from my drink then. So then I would just do some like pickle juice at aid stations in that way. And that seemed to like reset me in that moment. I did have eventual other GI issues and some vomiting after Michigan Bluff
whoa,
that I had to
hardcore.
reset another way. So lots of troubleshooting in this one.
Okay. That's good. We learned so much
I
in
swear,
these.
like
Yeah.
I think having like so I think I mentioned this on our last podcast maybe, but like Mike had a really tough day at Scout Mountain 100 a few weeks ago, and he wasn't he was really bummed that he had to drop out. He started vomiting really early on. But we had so many learnings regarding nutrition in that race that I was like, I know this is really disappointing, Mike, but like the takeaways here are huge and are going to
Mhm.
like transform your future racing experiences. So
Yeah.
like try to look at it that way and take what you can. And every Western States, I swear I'm learning something more about myself and like fine tuning and tweaking things even
Mhm.
more. And I think with this Western States, it was just the ability to troubleshoot and come out of that situation totally fine, still with
Yeah.
energy and still able to race. And it sounds like you kind of had a similar experience.
Yeah. That's such sage advice. I feel like we learn so much more, and this applies to life in general. We learn so much more from when we fail or make mistakes or have struggles than when everything goes perfectly. So
Totally.
I think that's a really good perspective to keep in mind. Yeah.
100%. Oh, yeah, that can't be more true. And I think like the little nuggets that you can take away and like stow away for the future, they just help you be stronger and smarter.
Yeah. Okay, so dropping into the canyons, we kind of talked about this a little bit. You said you're feeling super strong on the climbs. Were you, I guess one question I have is like, at what point do you start thinking about what place am I in? I kind of want to make some
Hmm.
moves, or are you not even thinking about that at this point?
Um, yeah, good question. Because I think for me, I didn't really, I could kind of like list the people who I knew were in front of me. So I didn't know an exact number by any means, but I was going to ask my crew at Michigan Bluff because that's where I was like, okay, let's start being like serious and competitive about this up there.
Mhm.
What was pretty nice in the moment was like I was climbing really strong and the climb up to Devil's Thumb. That was the first time I truly saw like people coming back to me, which is a really nice feeling in a race because then it's like it tells me, hey, you did things right in that first 50K. You're feeling good now. Climbing is your strength. And
Mhm.
it kind of lets me see like how my competitors are doing, what their strengths are in that moment, and then I know what's to come on the course. And then I can almost be like, all right, like I'm climbing really strong right now. I look like I'm climbing a little bit stronger than them. This will be come in handy later when we're going up Green Gate. I know I'm climbing like really well. I know I'm descending really well. And like
Yeah,
kind of taking those tokens away as like validation that I can like feed myself later,
love it.
which was helpful. So like I up the devil's clump. Oh my god. The devil's thumb climb. I um I was with like Emily Schmitz at the time, and I think I had like moved ahead of her, and then I think past Kareth and Lauren and Anna all up that climb. So I think I had moved up almost like 4 or 5 spots from the
Wow.
bottom there up to the top. So I was like, okay, this feels good, and it was really nice. And this is my advice to anybody being competitive at Western States in the future. I'm probably giving away some secrets here, but like it's nice to roll into an aid station before a pack of people. That way
Oh,
you can kind
well,
of like be served
you get
first.
all the attention.
Yeah, and you
Yeah,
get all the
interesting.
things. Um,
Yeah,
so that was nice because I knew that there was a pack with me and I was able to like get all the ice I needed. And they have popsicles at Devil's Thumb, and I've taken one the last couple of years, so I took a little popsicle there and like ran away
nice.
with it and was all happy.
Amazing. That's another thing about this race. Like, I was amazed at the volunteers rolling into an aid station, and you get surrounded by not just one person asking you what you want, but maybe two or three.
Hmm.
And you just feel like so taken care of. They're like, I'll fill your bottles. You go get cooled down. You go to the buffet. Like, I was just really impressed with the
They're
volunteers.
so good, and like out there too. Like not an easy to get to spots. Like we've got so
Yeah.
many needs and asks, and they're just so amazing. And I
The,
always think that's just like coming into an aid station, looking good, feeling good, being grateful. I swear there's like a benefit to having that positive energy as you're
yep.
like out there and leaving, and it's
It's
always really
super
beneficial.
heartwarming. Yeah.
Yeah, question for you, Rach. As I'm thinking about Devil's Thumb, like I felt like the climbs were a strength of mine, especially on that section this year. And I know during training camp, you had this like mini workout plugged into one of your long runs where you were pushing some of those climbs a little bit. So like up to Devil's Thumb, up to Michigan Bluff to kind of like desensitize race pace for you. Were
Yeah.
you then like thinking back on those simulations that you had during training camp and like tapping into like any of those feelings that you had felt previously?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I was trying to channel that like strong climbing feeling that I was having in training. And another thing that was like playing, or I guess another thing that was factoring in was, so I was running with Ingveld pretty much from Dusty Corners almost all the way to Michigan Bluff. And she would gap me a little bit on the descents. I felt great on the descents energy wise, and like my quads felt fine. Everything felt fine, but my tendons were killing me, especially on the steeper descents, like
Hmm.
the tops of my feet tendons, because you know how your feet slide forward.
Yeah.
So that was just like super painful. I also started having to stop and go to the bathroom there.
Mm.
Um, I think on those descents, I think there's like some postpartum thing that makes me just like have to go. And by the way, I think I peed my pants probably 30 times um, in the
You
race.
inspired me. That was like Something I've
Okay, the
never done in a race
dangerous
before.
thing about that though is you need to make sure you get rinsed off, because I feel like the salts, like the electrolytes in your urine, can cause some really bad chafing. So if you're going to be bold and pee, I feel like you got to lube up or make sure you rinse off. But I actually like kind of pooped my pants, I think, going down into, I don't know if it was like El Dorado or the other one, but that was like, I feel like that was the first moment where I was like, oh man, this could be really bad, because then like now my shorts are dirty and I could chafe with this and then I could get bacteremic and this could be really bad. But I was just like, nope, stay calm, get as cleaned up as you can, and then make sure when you get to the aid that you like rinse off as best you can.
Yeah.
So I felt really good on the climbs because it wasn't hurting my anterior tibial tendons, because I was like the force was more like back in my foot. So Ingvild would gap me on the descents, and then I would catch her on the climbs and get a little gap on her on the climbs.
Well, that's kind of fun, like the cat and mouse, and like almost being like, okay, where is she strong right now? Where am I strong?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like you guys had to have surged on that section, or just like I think working hard together was probably really helpful.
It's great.
For you. Like I think when I want to talk about your anterior tib in a second, but then when I rolled into Michigan Bluff, because I had caught up to Lottie on the climb up to Michigan Bluff, and that was like a nice feeling for me to like have Lottie as a buddy to run with. I know she's super strong.
She's great.
And like she was moving really well on this climb, and I was like, you know what? Like I don't need to pass Lottie in this moment. Let's just work together, and like kind of like tacked on behind her. And I felt like we were cruising up to Michigan Bluff in about like the same pace, if not a little faster than I have in previous years. And I was like, this is a good place to be. I'm not like overworking right now. And it's always, I love rolling into aid stations with somebody else. It's like such good energy.
It's awesome.
When I rolled into there, Mike had told me that you were 16 minutes ahead of me. And I was like, dang it.
Well, you made up a lot of time.
Well, I know.
You made up a lot of time.
Well, I was like, crap. Oh, that's so far. And I was like, okay. And I just, because I know like the second half of the course especially is just like your jam. Like, I mean, this whole course is your jam. You're so good at everything.
Oh, but gee, thanks, Leah.
I was like, I just know how strong you are from like training with you and everything. And when he said you were 16 minutes, and I was like, oh, okay. That's a bummer. I want to run with Rachel, but that's good. Like, I'm happy she's having a good day right now.
Spoiler alert, we did.
I know. And then like part of me too is like regretful in some ways that like it would have been really fun, because I think that would have been that strategy that I talked about a little bit more going into the race of trying things a little bit differently, and like going with you, for example, when it would have maybe felt like a little uncomfortable, and being like taking that risk and being like, let's see how it works. But I think there's just that part of me that's so risk averse and that's nervous about things blowing up in my face that I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah, it's so tough, especially like you said, when you're thinking about like, you know, you're like, I want to start a family, I want to do these other races. Like you would rather be like 3-time top 10 finisher than like 2-time top 10 finisher and a 1-time DNFer or whatever. Yeah, but at the same time, then you're also thinking, gosh, like, let's just send it and see what happens, and like throw caution to the wind a little bit.
Totally. Because like, then you see like, for example, like how Ingvild ended up, and it's like 5th place, like a really solid, like one of the fastest times in history.
Such a smart race.
Such a smart race. And it's like, could I do that? And am I just too afraid to do that? Maybe. But I would never know until I try. And like, I guess something that was really eye-opening this year was I PR'd by 16 minutes, and my time to Michigan Bluff or to Robinson Flat this year was like, to Lions Ridge. The first aid station was 16 minutes faster than last year. So,
oh wow! So then everything else was
after that was the same.
Whoa!
So I'm like, okay, so are these races truly won in some capacity in those early miles? Maybe, but then like not necessarily, because like we were with Ingvild and Esther into that first aid station. So it's just like making all those right decisions at the right moment and being like appropriately risky enough. And it's so hard to balance, because it's like that especially in 100 milers, because there's so much self-preservation for like future Leah and
Mhm.
future Rachel.
Mhm. It's
Um,
so fun to think about and tinker with all these things. Like somebody asked me if I wanted to do it again. Oh yeah, Meg McKenzie, she's staying with us right now. And I was like, gosh, I cannot think about that right now. Like, no. But then
yeah,
now that we're talking about it, I'm like, I really want to go back. Like there's so many things I would do differently and want to like test out.
it's so true. Like Mike asked me after the day
You're
after.
coming back next year.
Well, I know, and he was like, "Do you like how much of you wants to do this again?" I was like, I hate to say this. I was like, but so much of me wants to do this
Yes.
again. And I was like, I want to do it more, like 1,000 times more this year than I wanted to do it in the past, like 2 years after I finished.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
I don't know why it is. I think it's because like I keep learning more and I keep learning more about strategy and seeing those areas where I can be risky and do a little bit more and like see it come together. And it's like I would have never thought I'd run the times I've run here. So like maybe some of those times that I think are really scary right now are still within the realm of possibility, and that's pretty cool. But then it's
Mhm.
yeah, I know you get sucked in.
Yeah, totally.
Your anterior tib, though, I want to talk about this a little
Yeah.
bit because at Further this year, I've never had anterior tib issues in my entire life. And then I think there's something about just like running flat for miles and miles and miles that my anterior tib on both feet swelled up. And Jordan Carey, who is on, I'm assuming he's just on Tyler's crew
Yeah,
for
he's Tyler's crew chief, like in perpetuity.
shout out to Jordan Carey. He's also like one of the heads on the footwear team at Lululemon. He's just such a source of knowledge and like support and expertise and like crew expertise too. My gosh, that
Yeah.
guy's amazing. And
Good human.
I was on like day 2 of Further and I was like, I need Jordan, get Jordan in here. And they're like waving down Jordan to come into my crew tent to help me solve my like anterior tib issue. And we ended up cutting little triangles out of the tongues of my shoes to give space for
Huh.
my anterior tib to actually swell, but not have anything giving it pressure and opposition.
Okay, interesting. I'm gonna have to
And
ask him about that trick.
it saved the day. Like
Wow.
it was like not, it was a non-issue after that. And I'm like, that's why I called Jordan into the tent.
Nice. That's really cool. I ended up changing my shoes in Forest Hill to a shoe that just had a much more padded tongue, and I didn't have any issues for the rest of the race with my
That was good.
anterior tib, at least that I could tell.
Yeah.
But then after the race, my both of my ankles, and especially the one with the most painful anterior tib, they're super swollen.
Really?
Yeah, like
Oh.
I can barely fit my clinic shoes on.
You don't need your feet for a few days.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Um,
been little side note here. It's been like going into the clinic when like the patient sitting there and they have like their phone on the chair next to them. I'm like, oh no, where am I gonna sit? So I've just been like sitting on the patient exam table or like on the counter, like anywhere I can sit because I cannot stand.
oh my God. Yeah,
Yeah.
my biggest ailment right now is like I fell at mile 90, and I have this like brutal scab on my knee, but it's like one of those scabs that like when you bend your knee then you like break it back open. So like I
Oh
can't
no.
bend my left knee right now. So like when I'm walking down the stairs, I'm like peg legged with one of my legs and just can't I like I'm like physically I'm actually like kind of fine, but it's just me that I like even sleeping, I'm like I need to find like the perfect
Ugh.
position.
Yeah. Post ultra life is rough.
It's rough life.
Okay, so where were we? Forest Hill, sort of? Michigan
Michigan
Bluff? Do you have
Bluff.
anything else?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Um
Tell me about it.
oh God. So I came into Michigan Bluff with Lottie and I felt good, like actually really good physically. And I came in and I told my crew that I was like, guys, I feel really good physically, but I've been nauseous. I've been nauseous for probably like the 15 prior miles. And I wasn't sure if it was like my pace, overconsumption of calories and carbs, underconsumption. I like couldn't figure it out. I was like, I'm just nauseous though. So I was like, I think I need like anti-nausea medicine at the next aid station if we have it. Also, like I was like, I think I'm gonna go strictly to like just laying off of like excessive consumption right now. Let's see if we can just like reset it on this section. And so I drank some smoothie. I do like a lot of like naked smoothie in these races. And then that was actually like one of my quickest transitions of the day. Last year, I felt like I really got comfortable at Michigan Bluff, and like that's where the field like really got away from me. So this year I was like, my goal is to like, I'm not sitting down at Michigan Bluff, I'm being fast and just like getting what I need and headed out. And I actually love that section between Michigan Bluff and Forest Hill. Me, you, and Emily like ran a really nice pace during training camp. On that section, I was just really trying to channel like just the amount of running we did on it. We ran we ran the entire thing. And I think it's a fun section that's pretty short lived, and you get to do like almost like this full reset at Forest Hill. So I was really looking forward to that. So I get to the top of the Jeep Road, like pretty much done with the climbing before we start descending into Volcano Canyon. And I took a salt tab, and when I took this salt tab, it hit the back of my throat and just completely initiated this gag reflex of like, I had to stop, put my hand over my mouth and like try to swallow the salt tab down. And I did, but then I immediately needed to throw up from the salt tab. So then I made myself throw up, and I threw up like all the smoothie I had just drank. My poor little salt tab. I see my salt tab on the ground. I'm like, oh, I needed that. But that was actually, besides further, which I don't really count, that this was the first time I'd ever thrown up in an ultra before. And I've never had to like troubleshoot out of that before, especially in like such a competitive sense. Because I felt physically really good, like muscularly and everything. But then I was like, okay, this could be like a day ender if this keeps going. So I told myself, okay, give yourself 5 minutes of just water, then just go exclusively to electrolyte drink all the way to Forest Hill. And I did that, and that did actually reset me. I felt so much better after I threw up, and that reset me all the way to Forest Hill that I entered then with Lottie. We went up Bath Road. We ran like the whole thing, feeling really, really good. And I told my crew, hey, I just threw up. Like, it's good. I think I can go back to like gels and water, and like, let's do it. I actually think that's exactly what I needed. And that was the best. Then I felt like at Forest Hill, I was like ready to roll.
Nice. Do you know how far back you were at Forest Hill then? I feel like you probably made up
7 minutes from you there then.
So you made up 9 minutes? Well, I had a really slow, I feel like from Michigan Bluff to Forest Hill, I was like, I thought I was moving well, but then I was just kind of getting like a little bit bummed because I was running with Ingveld for so long, and I almost felt like I was holding back when I was running with her. Like I felt like pretty strong, but then she came into Michigan Bluff a little bit before me. And then when I left Michigan Bluff, which I didn't stay there very long, I kind of just got my bottles, got some ice, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
I told my crew there that I was going to want to change shoes at Forest Hill so they could have that ready. But you can see up the road on that climb after Michigan Bluff, and I couldn't see her at all. So I was just feeling discouraged. Like, what the heck? Where did she go? So I think like maybe that disappointment kind of like, you know, the emotion can slow you down when you're feeling bummed, like you're going to run slower.
Yeah, 100%.
And like feet were killing me. Like, Yeah,
I can completely relate to that. I was like, Lottie was in sight for me all the way up to the top of that climb on the road. And I was like, I can like, and then I passed her right as we were going up Bath Road. Then we ran up Bath Road together, and she's like, oh, I thought you were ahead of me. And I was like, no, like I had a moment back there. Like, you're good. We can just like roll into Forest Hill together.
You don't want to tell your competitor that you threw up though. So you just say I had a moment.
I know. So then I'm rolling into Forest Hill, and I'm getting a lot of like intel from like Megan Roach joined me on Bath Road, and David, and like something I like to hear in races is like when people ahead of me look bad. Like it's motivating to me.
Did they tell you that I looked bad?
They said you looked discouraged.
I was discouraged. Except when I thought when I saw Megan, I was with Keely.
They said you were also getting a pep talk.
Oh, okay.
Were you getting a pep talk?
So funny. So I was discouraged going into Forest Hill, but then as soon as I got Keely and got new shoes, I left the aid station at Forest Hill saying, I think I said to Keely, let's ride. And I was like feeling super ready to go. But then I feel like we passed Megan after that. So apparently I did not look enthusiastic enough for her. Yeah.
I know. Well, so they were telling me like,
so funny.
There was a lot of people that did not look good ahead of me. And I was like, Great. Right
That's
where
what
I
I
want
love to
them.
hear.
That's what I love to hear, especially at Forest Hill. Because I'm like, at
Yeah.
that point, I knew, I think I was in 11th place there. And I was like, okay, I know at least one of these people is coming back to
Yeah.
me.
Yep.
That's good. And I was like, and probably more. They told me like 3 people looked like corpses. And I was like, okay.
Keely told me that too. She was like, she said pretty much everyone looked bad except Katie. And yeah.
Yeah.
And she was like, we're moving so well. She was like, I think you can shoot for like third or fourth.
Totally. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'll like our times were historically like times that would be third or fourth for what
Yeah.
it's worth.
Yeah. Not good enough this year.
Not good enough. But yeah, so then how did you feel about the Cal Street section? Because then in this section, I think this is where then I was probably like almost consistently like 5 minutes behind you, I want to say.
Yeah. So I felt good. I felt like I was moving really well. Keely said that the next person ahead of me, I think she said like 6 to 8 minutes was the next person ahead of me. And I think I was in 10th. So we were pretty close. And as I was running out of Forest Hill, I heard somebody yell, Leah's coming. And I was like, bro. I better get moving. But I just felt like we were running so fast that I was like, surely we're going to catch some people. They're 6 to 8 minutes ahead, so it's going to take a little while. And then she said from 9th place, it was like 1 minute, kind of up to 6th or something. So I was like, okay, I felt like we were moving so well. But then like, I just wasn't seeing anyone. Like the entire way from Forest Hill all the way to Rucky Chucky, we passed a man and I was like, dang, I like really wish that was a woman, but at least we're swimming upstream, I guess.
Yeah.
But then as we were coming into Rucky Chucky, Keely, I think on one of the wider road sections, Keely's like, all right, we got someone coming. And I was like, who is it? And she was like, it's Leah. And I was like, oh. And at that point, I was so like, I mean, I love you and I was happy to see you, but I was also so tired and we still had 20 miles to go. And I was in my head, I was like, I thought we were catching people, not getting caught.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh my God. I was thinking about the scenario like, I had Matt Seidel pacing me, and gosh, I wasn't planning on taking a pacer on Cal Street. And then at Michigan Bluff, I was like, you know what, Matt, I think I do want you. Like, let's just have some fun. And he was a great pacer, and I'm so happy I had him. And we're like rolling down. And then I think the first time I saw you was when we opened up on that double track. And I kept thinking I was going to see like Ida or someone. Because he was telling me, he's like, I've got some like Scandinavian sensations right now.
Oh, you know what? I'm actually Swedish. My grandma's 100% Swedish. I know I don't look like
what he meant then.
Yeah. Oh, that is hilarious. Yeah. He was spot on. I'm 25%. And my grandpa was Norwegian. So anyways.
And I was like, okay, sweet. Because I was like, yeah, I was like, yeah, that would maybe make some sense. Like maybe Ida looked like crap earlier and she's coming back. And then I saw that it was you. And then I was like running uphill, like pretty okay. And then I was like, what do I, when I was like, maybe like 20 yards behind you, I was like, what do I say right now? Like, I know. And then I actually like didn't know what to say. And then you guys actually took off then down to the river, and you were quite hard to catch from like me seeing you all the way.
That was my first like 3 matches I lit right there. Yeah. Like when you're in a race and you know you're about to get caught, it's better to just not get caught, kind of.
Yeah. 100%. Like, it's wake because there's something mentally about getting caught that's like, it sets you back, and it's nearly impossible to come back. I think it's so hard for me to come back from that. But I was, for what it's worth, like, not that I was happy it was you, but I was like, oh, like, I'm glad that's Rachel right there.
It's like, it's good vibes for sure. Yeah. And there's a great photo of us at the Rucky Chucky aid station where I'm just like a pencil. I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself. And you're just like hugging my torso, and I'm like,
I know. And then Mike was on a photo contract with Nike, and he was not my crew chief for this race. So we had kept going back and forth about like, he probably wasn't going to see me much this day unless I was around Rachel. And I was like,
You're like,
Okay,
yeah, I'm
great.
going to get to see Mike.
Yeah, and so then what Mike said at the river, and I was like, I hope this isn't taken a weird way. He's like, this is the exact situation I wanted.
It was so perfect. I just wish we would have been in the river at the same time, but I had to
I
get out
know.
of Dodge, you know?
You definitely did. Like you zoomed across the river, and then I was thinking to myself, so I went across the river, which was so nice. I love not having to take a boat and getting to actually go across. You zoomed across, and then your Green Gate climb was extremely strong because I feel like normally I
I
do that
lit like
section.
10 more matches there.
Yeah, normally, it was funny. I think I told you this after the race, but I think I said to my pacer, Matt, I was like, I think she's burning some matches right here.
Oh yeah, I definitely was. I was going into my matchbox, honestly, pretty much from the moment you caught me at Rucky Chucky, I was like, all right, let's see what we got. Like, I'm just gonna send it and
Yeah.
see what happens. And
But like,
I
here's what I find just incredible is like you had, let's say, 15 minutes on me at Michigan Bluff, and then I cut that down to like, I mean,
zero,
nothing at the river. And then the
zero.
fact that like that incited this like chase in you that I'm not kidding when I say like I was cruising the last I know you because you know how you were cruising that last 20 miles like we
I
were
felt like I
cruising.
was ripping. Yeah.
Yeah. And every aid station I came into, they were like, Rachel's right there. She's a minute ahead. She's a minute ahead. And I'm like,
You're
I
like,
know. And I
same
can't
thing with
freaking get her.
Priscilla last year, right? Wasn't it the same thing where Priscilla
Exact
was
same
1 minute
thing.
ahead?
They're always like, they're right there. They're right there. And I'm like, I'm moving fast right now.
Yeah.
Like, and I think this was my
I
fastest
could
time from river to the finish by about like 5 minutes. And last year was so much cooler and like quite easier to like move that fast on. So the split that you then did river to the finish, the split that everybody did river to the finish was just crazy.
so fast. I think you uploaded your run first,
Mm-hmm.
got the crown, and then I think I got it by like a minute from you. And then Ida took it by maybe like 7 or 8 minutes, which I was
Yes.
shocked because I was like, I ripped that. I thought like, and then Danny Moreno uploaded her run. She was pacing Ingveld, and I think she was like 12 minutes faster than us,
Yeah.
which
I know. And what's even more wild is Courtney's time that isn't even on Strava is like, so let's say I did the river to the finish probably in like low 350, maybe like 348 or something. Um, you did that even faster. And then Courtney did it like 330 or something.
no.
And I'm like, what?
Holy cannoli.
So
I
it's like,
mean,
I do think I think I set limitations on myself pretty often, but
yeah,
like, yeah, maybe there's something to be said when I like tap into that place in my head where I'm like, you can do river to the finish in 4 hours. Maybe I need to be telling myself like, you can do this in 3:45, and
yep,
then my body
yep,
will like meet me where it's
yeah,
at with like that time.
yeah. I
Ugh.
think I could hear the cheers for you at. Okay, so here's the other thing. When you caught me, I thought I was in 10th. And so I was like, dang, now Leah and I are jockeying for 10th position, which is it's like, Western States sort of podium slash get in automatic for the next year. And I hated that. But
Yeah.
then when we got up to Green Gate, Katie Asmuth was there and she's like, you're in 9th. And I was like, can you confirm, like, are we really in 9th? Because I think it was it Lin Chen
Lin
who,
Chen.
yeah, she had dropped out at Rucky Chucky. And that relieved me because then I was like, okay, well, at least we're 9th and 10th now.
Yes.
And I saw our friend Becca Wendell was like very close there as well. So then I was like, okay, at least we're like getting more comfortably in this like top 10 position. But
Totally.
it was also disappointing to like think about like, I don't know, like having to like battle you for that
I
specific
know.
spot. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, and
Yeah.
all I kept thinking about too was we talked about this on our pre-race podcast was like you did a workout on that section the last day of training camp And all I was thinking to myself as I'm like chasing you down, always consistently 1 minute ahead of me, I'm like, Rachel knows what it's like to freaking suffer on this section. And like, she's probably channeling that so hard right now. I know how hard she can run up to like Ruby Point. I know how fast she can descend that. And like,
But
not
you
that I
were
was like,
too. But you
I
were too. We
know.
were running. We ran like we were both ripping, and we ran like the exact same time,
I
basically.
think we ran exact same from like river to probably no hands or like pointed rocks, for example. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, so then I got my pacer. So then Matt Mitchell paced me. He's paced me the
Where did
last
you
3
pick up
years
Matt?
at the river.
Okay.
So he's planning on doing Green Gate to Pointed Rocks with me, and he ended up
Okay.
having to do the river to Pointed Rocks with me due to the fire.
Yeah,
Which
let's
is
talk
funny. Like
about
I'm trying
that.
to explain to my crew out there what's going on. Like they show up on the near side of the river, and they're like, "We couldn't get to Green Gate," and I was like, "Yeah, you can. Why not?" Like trying to tell them what they can
Yeah.
and can't do on that day. I'm like, "No, you can always
Oh
get
my
to Green
gosh.
Gate." Because I was like,
Yeah.
"Why am I seeing this crew on this side?" And then they were
Yeah.
like explaining to me the situation, and I was like,
Do
"Oh."
you so they had time to pivot, like they tried to go to Green Gate and they had time to go around, or how did they manage that?
Yes, it was that
Okay.
exact scenario, and I think it was
Oh.
very hectic to
Oh
like
yeah. To
get
make
back
that
around.
transition, because it's not a quick drive from Green Gate to
No,
Rucky Chucky, even though it's only like 2 miles apart.
yeah. So they found out, like I think
No.
en route maybe, and I know
Okay.
that like when I saw them at the river, then they had to pivot from like what they had for me and all that stuff. But it actually wasn't bad at all. I just was taking 2 handhelds anyhow, and
Okay.
it was fine. But
Yeah.
I remember seeing
Okay.
them there and just being like
Huh.
confused. And then
Yeah.
I had this one of my best moments of the day was when I was crossing the river. I got this like really nice pair of Oakley sunglasses at Further
Whoa.
this year from the
Whoa.
Lululemon team. And I'm obsessed with them. Like I love them so much. They're on my head. And then I think I lost balance in the river and my sunglasses. Mike has this like photo series of me and like I dunk under my head, my sunglasses are like here and then
Oh
over my
no.
ponytail.
Oh
And then they
no.
like start floating away. I stretch my arm back, grab them, lift them above my head. And then everybody on the other side of the river's like, yeah.
Yeah. It's
And
a
I'm
real
like, yeah.
athlete right there. That's
I know.
amazing.
And then I proceed to like every muscle in my legs like seize up and cramp like 2 steps later when I try to get over a rock. And this is right in front of Brian Powell from I Run Far as he's snapping photos. And I'm like, I'm a mess. I'm just like
That's so funny.
seizing up. Um, but yeah.
So
So the last section then, let's say to Pointed Rocks. Oh, this is actually a fun story. So crossing Highway 49, I wasn't sure how far ahead of me you were, but you were probably a minute or two at this point. Just always consistently ahead. And the thing with Pointed Rocks, though, it's like you can hear when people cheer, and I didn't hear anybody cheering for you. So I was like, shoot, she's probably like over two
but
minutes
I
ahead
in
of me.
reality I was like right there.
I know, and you had your headlamp off.
I'm getting like anxiety / heart palpitations. Like my palms are sweating right now, just like reliving this moment. Okay, continue.
I am so excited to share that the Trail Network is supported by Osprey Packs, the premier pack company and creators of my personal favorite trail running pack, the Dyna 6. I've used the same Dyna 6 for the past 7 years without anything breaking. I've taken it on long days in the mountains and I've done races in it, including the CCC 100-kilometer race at UTMB. All their packs are extremely comfortable and have top-notch durability. I'm so grateful to our friends at Osprey for supporting our podcast. Go check them out at osprey.com or at your favorite retail store.
Yeah, because your headlamp was off, which is like a great move.
No,
but then I was
Leah. We didn't have headlamps. We were running in the dark because my crew couldn't get to Green Gate. So they didn't know, or I don't know. So I had Vince from Osprey at Rucky Chucky. He gave me some bottles, and I was like, I had heard about the fires, and I knew my crew wasn't going to be able to get into Green Gate. I was like, "Do you have a headlamp?" And he's like, "No, I'm sorry." I was like, "All right, well." Part of the reason I was running so hard is I knew I was going to be stuck in the dark.
Yeah.
And I wanted to decrease the amount of time that I was running in the dark. And so as soon as it got dark, basically like after where's the
It got
one
dark
with
right around mile 90. So right after that last aid
that
station
aid
before
station?
Pointed Rocks. Yeah.
Yeah. So the one with Hal, I mean, no, not Hal, Scott Jurek.
No, it's
the one with Scott Jurek.
Mhm.
That one. Right after that, it started getting dark. And so Keely had her iPhone and she was like, I can't give this to you because that's muling, but I can hold it on the ground. And like, it's a little bit chunky, that climb. Like, there's some kind of technical little spots there. So we were moving really slow because we couldn't see anything. And we were super close together.
Yeah.
So that's why we were not turning our headlamps off to be sneaky. It's because we didn't have them. Anyways, so you come up on Pointed Rocks.
And we have this great video of my pacer, Matt. He has this, I'm like, oh, what's that cute little animal? And I was like, oh, he's a little sweetie. And then Matt goes, Leah, that's a skunk. And I was like,
it was cute.
He whips out his phone and starts recording it. And he's like, I'll get in front. I'm like, okay, cool. So he like takes one for the team, gets in front of me. And he's like, oh, Jesus. And you see the skunk like lift his little tail up. And I'm like, what? And he's like, go. F9. There's a skunk on the trail.
Oh my gosh. We love it.
He's telling the aid station like announcer people that. So as I'm getting close to the aid station, they announce my name loud on like the loudspeaker there, which I was expecting them to announce yours, but maybe they did and I just like didn't hear it. But I hear them say, and here we've got F9 Leah Yingling with a skunk.
Oh, that is so funny. I hope that got on the live stream. That is amazing.
No, I talked to Brett Hornig about it because he was at Pointed Rocks on the live stream and he was getting all this intel and was so excited to share it. But they were doing the finish line interviews of 1, 2, and 3 at that point.
Fair enough. We got to run faster to get that.
I know.
Oh my goodness. So from my perspective, like we're coming into Pointed Rocks and I glance back and I see 2 headlamps and I just say to Keely, oh crap, we got to go. So I just like dashed in front of Keely. So now I'm running blind without a light. And fortunately that section's a little more smooth, but I was just like, whatever, like I just got to do this. Like, let's see how many more matches we have. And Keely's running behind me. So there's like my shadow. And I thought it was my shadow, but then I saw the skunk. And I was like, oh, it looks like a little mini bear, like walking on 2 legs. Like, this is really cute. And I was like, oh, wait, there's a little white there on the tail. And the tail was definitely up, which is why it looked like a little mini bear. And then I was like, the skunk is going too slow for me. Like, I'm going to need to pass. And it wasn't getting out of the way.
And it was moving so freaking slow, too.
It was too slow. So I went into the tall grass
good idea.
to pass the skunk. And Keely was like, did you get sprayed? And I was like, no, I'm good. I totally got sprayed. I didn't know until the finish. And everyone was like, yeah, you running around the track. It was like a waft of stink. But then I saw my crew. I tried to pull a Claire Gallagher and like dropped everything. I took my shirt off, like got my headlamp on, got my pacer Marianne, and I was just like out of there as quickly as possible.
Gosh, part of me wishes, like I knew you were close, but I don't think I knew like actually how close. Because people were like, oh yeah, she was just through. I'm like, okay, but like
but
how
like people have been saying that all day. No, you were like 50 meters behind.
Oh my God. Yeah. And then I did the same there. Like I even like on my little like pre-race little index card there, I always want Pointed Rocks to be like quick. And I think on my note it says quick with an exclamation point. Like I want like a bottle and a couple gels and like I want this to be quick. And in past years, Mike has paced me on that section. And one of my complaints is like I get so just like vulnerable with him. I'm a baby and I'm just like, let's just get this thing done.
Can't have your lover pace you like that.
No. So I had Matt Seidel this year and he was great. And he told me to like, you know, like, let's go, like, let's cruise. And I was getting like a little complacent there because it's at this point, I'm in 9th, you're in 8th. And like, I'm like, we're good. Like, if it's Rachel, I love Rachel. Like, not like she can have it by any means, but I was like, it's like, I'm in a good spot. And like, I was starting to have
there's not a big difference between 8th and 9th or 8th
really
and 10th.
And I was starting to have a little bit of those feelings, like, let's just enjoy this. But then like, I knew I was close. So I was actually moving on that descent better, like way better than I normally do. Like I was a lot more focused. And then I see it. And I'm asking Matt, I'm like, when did the last woman come through the last aid station? And he's like, oh, we were like looking at that tracker and like Anna's like hadn't even checked in yet. And I'm like, cool.
Oh, you're thinking behind you. Like, how much time do I have on the person behind me?
Yeah. Cause I'm like, okay, like Rachel can move it. And I was like, oh, well, how's my ninth place? And he's like, yeah, we were looking at that tracker when we were there and like nobody had checked into 90 yet. I'm like, sweet, good. And then I see a headlamp coming behind me and I say,
Priscilla.
And I'm like, Matt, we haven't passed anybody in a while. There's no guy that this should be right now. I was like, who's coming behind me in the headlamp? He's like, oh, I don't know. And then Priscilla just
shredded
past me. And I'm like, I think I said, okay, Priscilla. Okay, you go, girl. And then I did try to like stick with her for a minute or so. And like, she was definitely like putting a move on at that point, like as anyone would. And I like, she definitely got out of touch pretty fast. And I was like, darn it. Okay. But then I was like, okay, well, now I'm in 10th place. And I was like, I do not want to lose 10th place. So then I went from like this kind of like complacent to like, okay, now you got to race again.
You got to focus.
So then I felt like from like no hands up to Roby. But then I started to get worried about you. I was like, oh, is Priscilla about to pass Rachel too? I was like, come on, Rach.
I was running what I felt like recklessly. Like, I feel like I couldn't quite see, like my headlamp was not super tight on my head. So it was kind of like flopping and it was like, it's
you
not very technical.
You were running.
I was running as hard as I possibly could, which is kind of what we were talking about at the beginning. It's like, I feel like I could not have done anything more than I did.
No, because like, let's say you were a minute ahead of me at Pointed Rocks. You put 4 minutes on me then from Pointed Rocks to the finish, which means, and like, I was moving that was the best I've done that entire section ever. And like, I ran almost every step up the Roby Point climb minus like when I tried to take a hiking step and I seized at one occasion. But like, other than that, I was moving. Yeah. And I like, even going up to Roby Point and then once we hit the road, I kept asking, like, once my crew joined me up there, I was like, how am I behind me? Am I good? Somebody just tell me I'm
seriously, good. Because that was going to be my other question for my crew is like, if I'm an 8th, how far back is 11th? Like, how sure is like this current top 10? Yeah. Totally. And I think it ended up being quite a bit to 11th, right?
Like, I think I had 20 minutes to Anna when it was all said and done, which was like, that I would have loved to know that up at Roby Point, but at the same time, I do feel like I was then running
get the most out of yourself. Yeah.
So I do think like getting passed by Priscilla like flipped a switch in me where it like definitely made me work harder than I wanted to in that moment. But I think with the way I am, I need that kick in the butt sometimes.
Yeah, same. I mean, you were my kick in the butt multiple times. Oh my gosh.
Like, I don't think I think the fact that you had me behind you and I had you in front of me, that was the best thing for us in that scenario, to be honest. Like, I think for me, it forced me to not get complacent in that full 20 miles and like keep running because you were like my little carrot. And then probably for you, you're like, I don't want to get passed. So let's like.
Well, I knew you were hot on my heels and you knew that you were super close. So it was like we both were forced to stay extremely sharp because we knew that if we kind of got weak or complacent that the other one would capitalize. And I feel like because of that, I'm so grateful to you because I feel like without that, there's no reason it's really hard to get the most out of yourself, right? Totally. And that's why we race is to see what we can do. And it's like we help each other with that. So that was really cool.
It was so cool. Like, and I'm so happy it was you. And I'm like I know like position wise we would have loved to be higher on that day, but I think we ended up having a really fun race that probably isn't highlighted too much because we were kind of in that like 8th, 9th, 10th position back there, and it was so dynamic and interesting and fun and like all the highs and the lows. And Priscilla, for example, she was one of the people I passed on the way up to Devil's Thumb that I was telling myself, I was like, oh, I'm climbing so much better than her. Like, if I pass her handedly now, there's no way she's coming back later.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I saw her pass me, and I was like, well, that was wrong.
It's a good lesson of like that, you know, you can feel bad in the race and come around, and also other people can feel bad and you can pass them when they're not having a good moment, and they can come back around and get you.
Yeah, you just like cannot let up, which is a great lesson.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about, I mean, how did you feel then when you crossed that finish line and you saw that you had run under 17:30?
I was like, dang, that's a fast time. Because I was like, I definitely want to finish before midnight. I don't want to keep my crew up super late.
Yeah.
But that was 10:28 p.m. Like that was a perfect kind of late night for us.
Yeah.
But that time is really, really good. I thought like I was really, really happy with it. And also knowing how hard I pushed and knowing all the other women that were around me and ahead of me and behind me, I was like, dang, ladies, like we're so strong. This is really incredible.
It was so incredible. Like, I think that was just seeing how, I mean, close 8, 9, and 10 were, for example, but then hearing and seeing like what happened in front of us too. Masters record, like second fastest time ever. Fu Zhao's time.
Fastest debut. Fastest debut 100 for both Ingveld and Caleb. Yeah.
Like Emily Hawgood on her, 4th or 5th Western States, like her top finish running within minutes of an Ellie Greenwood's time. That would have been like mind-blowing years ago. And like just thinking about that, honestly, how probably so many other people in the field were feeling that day too, of like, dang, I just ran my best race. And
everyone else did too.
Everyone else did too.
So cool. Do you think there was something, because it wasn't, I mean, I know that it was a cool year and that lends itself to faster times, but do you think there were any other factors that made this a fast year? Or do you think this is just the new norm?
Good question. I think this is the new norm. I think people are learning how to run 100 miles well. And I think the caliber of the field this year was exceptional. Even going into this race, I was like, this is the most competitive Western States I've lined up for. And I think just like seeing what's possible, like Katie and Courtney in recent years, just redefining what's been possible at Western States. So there's like no bar that you're just like restricting yourself with. We're pushing ourselves more and more. And I think that part has just been astounding to like leave all those just restrictions at the door and run your race and see what happens. Like that's mind blowing. I think nutrition has come such a long way. I think people are learning how to execute with like strategy and like cooling so much better too. And like this year, like it wasn't the hottest year. It never felt unbearable though. It felt like really, really manageable. So maybe that speaks to like our heat training and our topical cooling, but it never felt that bad. And I think that also attributed to like the lack of attrition.
Yeah, totally. Super interesting. Do you have any more reflections before I go into a couple questions from our audience?
Oh man, I guess one for you before we can dive into some questions is like, you know, Tyler had a great day out there as well. You had a phenomenal day. Talk about getting to share that experience with him and what that meant for you guys as a family unit.
Yeah, I think if I'm being honest, going into this race, we never said this, but I felt like it would be kind of a miracle if we both finished and did decently, considering kind of everything we have going on in our lives, like having moved to Salt Lake City less than a month ago, starting residency and not even knowing whether I would be able to do the race because I didn't have my schedule. I didn't know who I would be working with or if there would be any way to get the time off to go. So it was just a lot of life stressors that we really tried to manage and like, be as calm and collected with it. But I mean, moving is stressful. So I think I'm really, really kind of surprised and also happy that we were both able to have decent days out there. Tyler ended up in 7th place, which is his lowest finish in 4 years, but still really amazing.
And within seconds of a PR too, right?
Yeah. I think he was really close to a PR, and he set the Masters record by, it was like 40 or 50 minutes or something like that. So,
and he got to do like a nice little handhold. Lou walked him in. So.
Yeah. It's really cool. I mean, we had such a huge support system out there. Both of our sets of parents were there, and we had a whole crew specifically for Lewis, and they even made T-shirts that said Lou Crew.
They were so. And what did Lou's shirt say?
Lou's shirt said, "I'm Lou." Yeah,
that's so
pretty
good.
Funny. Yeah, it was awesome.
Oh, so
All
special.
Right, should we dive into some questions from the audience?
Let's dive in.
All right. This one's from Molly the midwife. How do you balance your jobs with being pro athletes and getting time off for races?
Cool. That's a good question.
So maybe just start by, I mean, I think a lot of people know what your job is, but just like say what your job is.
Yeah. So I'm a biomedical engineer by trade, and I work in the electrophysiology field in a job that travels a lot between Utah, Idaho, and Montana. My schedule is extremely sporadic and unpredictable, oftentimes being on flights some weeks and in the hospital probably at least 3 to 5 days every week. So my job isn't remote. Like maybe on those 2 days when I'm not in the hospitals, I am working remote at home, but those remote days are pretty unpredictable. So I work for Johnson & Johnson MedTech, and luckily for me, we have a pretty good PTO policy with a decent amount of days. I use absolutely all of my PTO on running. So much. We have like vacation days. I also have like these like work family days. I also have some like floating holidays. So I am that person that advocates for all my coworkers to take advantage of all of the style of vacation days that they get, because I definitely do that. And last year with my job, my balance was completely out of whack, and I ended up taking a leave of absence for about 3 months or so, from July through December. Well, I guess almost 4 months. And that was really necessary at that moment in time. And I'm super grateful that my work had worked with me to make that happen. But it's not easy. I think it's tough. And I think the fact that both my husband and I prioritize running as our main hobby, and like that is our vacation. Like there's no other style of vacation that we do. This is vacation. So absolutely all my PTO days go to that. I did, however, I am making a career change here, starting like next week and then into September. So I will have a remote job starting in September, which will be very nice.
Super exciting.
And then, Rach, talk a little bit about your balance.
Maybe I'll skip this one and just answer this next one because it's kind of similar.
Yeah.
This is from Banana Pants 8. How did you swing doing this? Yeah, great handle, by the way. Banana Pants 8. How did you swing doing this first week of intern year? You must have an amazing program. So I had my first week of residency the week of Western States. So as I mentioned, I wasn't entirely sure if I was even going to get to run because I didn't know if I would be able to get the time off. I started on a sports medicine rotation that happened to not have clinic on Friday, which was really nice. And then I was actually talking to one of my friends from medical school because I wasn't sure what time I would get off on Thursday. So I was trying to figure out what time to get my flight. And my friend said, Rach, you should just email and say, hey, I need to be done by 2. I have a flight at 4. You can't do this on like a medicine rotation or a surgery rotation, where you actually have to be there. But when you're in someone else's clinic and they don't really need you there, it's a more reasonable request. So I emailed my program coordinator and asked for that. And I got an email from the attending that I'm working with, and she said, oh, you have a race? You should just take Thursday off. So I was able to get both Thursday and Friday off, which, yes, Banana Pants 8. I do have an amazing program. I feel super lucky to be where I am, and I really feel like I'm in the right place. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's awesome that they like prioritize your life too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like anything in life, things will ebb and flow. And in a couple weeks, I'm going to be in the ICU working 80-hour weeks. So, it's not always Fridays off, but I feel like you said, it's like you got to just enjoy when you do get the time, because it's not a sure thing. All right, another one for you, Leah. And I think this one's really good, because I think you and I are pretty unique with our training strategy. But this is from Rosemary C. Dance. Big congrats. Love to hear your training build for this race. Miles, elevation, heat training.
Yeah, I think I've gone on record saying like each of my years at Western States has looked drastically different. You and I both, Rachel, are pretty low mileage athletes. And I think you even told me one time that was something that like gave you some confidence in knowing that you could tackle 100 miles, because you saw that I could do both Western States and UTMB last year off of like what is still high mileage in relative terms, but in comparison to like the top level of elite athletes that we're competing at is actually quite low, almost to the point where it's maybe like 2/3 to 1/2 of what some of our other competitors are doing. So for me, that meant peaking for Western States with like 3 85-mile weeks with probably around 15,000 feet of vert. I do a lot of vert in my training on a week-to-week basis. So I normally have at least like 10,000 feet in 50 plus miles. This is usually like when I peak, it's usually around like 14, 15-hour weeks. And that seems to be like my high bar of like what I can sustain with my job. I do think if I had a more flexible work-life balance, I would probably be doing a few more doubles and maybe getting closer to that like 17 hours a week when I'm peaking. But my normal weeks are anywhere from like 11 to 13 hours and then upwards of 15 and a half for Western. But yeah, I had like 3 peak weeks and then brought it back down. I found that I wasn't having a lot of bandwidth from an energy perspective to do a lot of workouts in this block, which I think is probably where Rachel and I contrast the most. I tend to like see your training, Rach, and like you've just got so much great quality in your training, which I really admire. And that's something I think moving forward, especially as I have a career change, I'd like to do a little bit different, is like having a few more workouts that I'm not like pulling the plug on or just like, kind of half-assing, but like getting it done. And then heat training, I think we probably did similar stuff here too, but pretty much like 3 weeks out from the race, doing like a 2-week dedicated like sauna protocol where I went for about 25 minutes after all of my runs, pretty much for like a 2-week period straight. I don't really like the idea of like going outside and running in like extra clothing and stuff like that. I kind of like doing my heat training largely through the sauna and then doing some of our long runs and other easy runs like in the heat of the day and not avoiding that. I think is really important from like just that mental perspective of getting like uncomfortable and staying like mentally strong in the heat.
Yeah, similar with the heat training. Although I did one run in the heat of the day and I honestly like felt like I wanted to die, and I told Tyler that if that was the race I would definitely have dropped out because I could barely run. I felt so hot. But yeah, similar mileage to you. I think I ranged from 65 to 85. I did sort of a few days before the race, I calculated my mileage from training camp, but I made it include the Monday. So I think that stretch of 7 days was maybe like 90 or 95 miles. But yeah, not as much as I think a lot of the more elite ladies. And then also ranging from maybe 12 to 15,000 feet of vert. So not a ton, but we still did it and we did it well. So I think there's something to it. I am kind of curious what more volume would look like and how that would feel. I think at some point in my life I would like to just try that. I don't think we do low volume because we think it's necessarily the perfect training. We do it out of necessity. So maybe someday it won't be as necessary when
that's so true. True. And I think like the recovery element of that higher volume is like, that's what we sacrifice. Like we don't do higher volume right now because we don't really have the time, but also like the requisite necessities to recover from that volume. It's hard.
Yeah. All right. I think that's probably good. I think we can call it there. Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, it was so special. And we talked about running together leading into the race. Like, how cool would that be if we got to share some miles together? I would have never imagined we would get to share as many miles as we did and then have the dynamic race that we had between each other. But I'm so happy it was you. And I'm so happy that I had you as my carrot to be chasing, and that you had just, honestly, I know it might have physically not felt this way at times, but like a pretty picture perfect first 100-miler where you really saw it through and saw the ups, the downs, the goods, the bads, and just came out on top. And it was so inspiring.
So much fun.
Oh, well,
love you, Leah.
Love you, Rach. Until next time. Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I know it was a longer one, but we hope you found it interesting just to have a behind-the-scenes play-by-play of our Western States experiences. You can find more of our episodes at the Trail Network Podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on Instagram at the Trail Network Pod. We'd love to hear your feedback. Just drop us a comment or send us a DM and tell us what you want to hear more of. Until next time, thanks so much for joining us.